Oh la 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 bam bam. Oh la 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 bam bam. Oh la 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 bam bam. Oh la 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 big it up. Oh la 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 big it up. Oh la 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 bam bam. Bir ba 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 bir ba bir de. Bir ba 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 bir ba bir de. Bir ba 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 bir ba ba bir ba bir de. Bir ba ba ba.
Hello everyone. Welcome again to Home and Away Jamaica TV, where we discuss everything real estate. I am Robert Taylor, one of your hosts, attorney at law with Taylor Law Jamaica. And with me again this week is our co-host Paulette Price. Paulette is Red Roof Properties. And so Paulette, welcome. Good to have you on with us today.
Thank you, Robert.
So, Paulette, we have a very exciting show today. We're going to be discussing something that is the bugbear of everyone, and that is financing.
Definitely.
And we have with us no other better person than Kaydan Green, mortgage manager, Lead Mortgages. And Lead Mortgages is a mortgage broker, but we're gonna have Kaydan let us know more about what she does and more about what role Lead Mortgages can play when buyers are looking property and are in that very stressful period of identifying their first or second home. Welcome, Kaydan. How are you?
I'm doing well, Robert, and thanks for having me on today. So, Lead Mortgage Brokers, as you rightly said, is a mortgage brokerage company. What we do is we assist our customers in Jamaica and along the diaspora in achieving their home ownership goals. And we do so by helping them through the mortgage acquisition process. Now, most persons who are going to be purchasing will need to have a mortgage, right, to complete the transaction, because they'll have their deposit and they'll need that balance to close the sale. So what we do is we assist our customers in getting pre-qualified, and then we also assist them throughout the mortgage process, basically hand-holding them, because it can be an overwhelming process, especially if you're not here locally and you have to try to manage a situation being overseas and being away from the integral nature of the process. So we try as best as possible to kind of handhold our customers, let them understand what the process requires, assist them any way we can in getting accounts opened, etc., and just guide them along the process to make it as easy as possible for them.
Great.
Sorry, Kaydan, could I just ask you a question? Usually people are a little nervous about doing finance long distance because they tend to always compare the process to how it's done at home, and want to sometimes introduce some of the way they do things. So for example, if you take the US, although I'm from the UK, if you take the US, sometimes people negotiate by saying, I'll pay some of your fees. I know we don't do that here in Jamaica, but would your company be open to it, and would the financial institutions allow it? Is it something you guys may have had discussions about? Is it possible? Tell us if that's possible.
All right. So the financial market, as you rightly said, is very different as it is in the States. So we try to help customers to navigate the difference between the two areas, and based on what it is that they want to probably negotiate, we will try as best as possible to see which financial institution is open to that type of negotiation that the customer is seeking. So it's not that it is fixed in stone, it's for the discussion to be had, and then for me to try to manage their expectations with what they already know, and then guide them along what the local procedures are in relation to the specific financial institution.
Well, that's good to know, because I get asked those questions sometimes, and obviously I've recommended your company a few times as well, but I always say to them, I can't answer those questions. It's best to speak to the expert, and I'm really an advocate for people working with the professionals and not listening to what my cousin did or my aunt did or my friend said. So
Exactly.
that's really good to know. Yeah, that's really good to know.
So, Katie Ann, what I wanted to look at or introduce our audience to is really your value proposition. Because what I'm getting from you is that there are a number of mortgage institutions out there, and navigating that process can be a task in of itself. But what it seems to me that Lead Mortgage Brokers does is that rather than have the client having to endure that arduous process of approaching each mortgage entity, you tend, I would imagine, to look at their credit profile, look at their particular needs, and then match them with a principal or primary mortgage institution who you then assist that purchaser in processing the application rather than exposing them to that very difficult process. Let me know if that's how you work, and if so, some of the institutions that you represent.
That is exactly what we do, Robert. So we understand that navigating each and every single financial institution is a process, not only to get contact within the institution, but also to understand the nuances that each institution may have in relation to their mortgage process. And the task of acquiring a mortgage is already, it can possibly be an overwhelming one. So the value Lead Mortgage Brokers offer to our clients is that we have what I like to call our tentacles. So we have our tentacles in a few institutions. We have our connections there, and we're updated with their policy requirements quite often. So we know what it is that a specific bank X is able to offer as opposed to a bank Y. That eliminates the process of a client having to go to each and every single one of these institutions, especially our overseas clients, because we know we all lead busy lives, especially now in this pandemic. Persons are a little bit overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
So it is good when you have one person that you can liaise with that is able to give you the requisite knowledge and somewhat filter out the noise that you may have in relation to the process. So having or grasp of knowledge of these particular institutions, we're able to say, okay, based on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, this company is able to give you X and this company is able to give you Y. So what we try not to do is to overwhelm the clients with too much information. So rather than giving them the scope of whatever all the financial institutions are able to offer, what we perhaps may do is to narrow it down between two most valuable mortgage options then. And we can say to the client, okay, I think this is a good option because, and we have our pros and cons there, and we give you this option because the pros and cons are here, right? So it's based on a personal assessment of each customer. So we build our relationship with our clients. So we know exactly what a Paulette would want to acquire or get accomplished versus what a Marie would want to get accomplished, right? So
Yeah.
each of those clients are two specific and individual customers wanting a specific objective at the end of the day. So that is where our value comes in. We work with Victoria Mutual Building Society. We work with Jamaica National. We work with First Caribbean, Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and Sagicor.
Great, that's a very varied list. So just in terms of a practical example, so let's use three situations. I live overseas, Jamaican that I live abroad, and I'm looking to buy something in Jamaica, have worked abroad for 20 years. Other situation is I am self-employed, and the other situation is I live in Jamaica and I work in the civil service. Would you use or take a different approach with those three different applicants in terms of placing them with a particular mortgage institution?
Definitely. So what I'm getting from you that stands out most vividly in my mind is that these customers have very unique situations, right? The civil servant that is here would most likely be benefiting from some type of NHT benefits based on contributions. They would also get perhaps a reduced rate in terms of NHT. And their employment is local. So we will assess that customer. For the self-employed person, now their requirements in terms of what they would have to present is very different from what somebody who has formal employment would need to present, right? So navigating with that customer is also different. So we would have to see which institution is able to give the civil servants, local civil servants, what it is that they want, versus which bank may have, or financial institution may have a product that is more suitable for a self-employed individual and able to give them the maximum benefits there. Same for the person who is overseas but Jamaican, but they are interested in Jamaica. Now, different institutions may have different policy requirements for overseas nationals. They may also have policy structures that give overseas persons different lending values or rates compared to the local applicants. So each of those situations would have to be managed accordingly.
Great. One of the questions that I think comes up as well is a person living abroad is tied into the credit bureau system in that country, while in Jamaica we've now developed our own credit bureau system. How do you manage that process where someone lives abroad but does not have any credit history locally?
So for our overseas customers, if they do not have any local credit information with our credit bureau system, that is absolutely fine. We do utilize the overseas credit bureau system as much as we do the ones locally, actually. But the customers are required to present or to obtain two reports based on the systems, right? So they would present an overseas credit report as well as a local credit report. But if the local credit report has no data, it doesn't hinder them from acquiring a mortgage facility.
So just for clarity, are you saying even if they don't have any activity in Jamaica, they would still need to make the application for the credit report locally anyway?
Right, because we wouldn't be able to verify that they have no credit obligations in Jamaica without that report.
Katie, or Kadan, let's get back to NHT. Same question with a similar angle. So I live overseas and I've not contributed to the NHT, but as a Jamaican citizen, I may have some entitlement. Is there a possibility that I can still benefit from the NHT facility?
Certainly. I do have overseas customers whilst being overseas have continued to contribute to the National Housing Trust. Now, to be able to access a benefit from the trust, you would have to be contributing for 52 weeks consecutively. That's 1 full year. So if an individual has gone overseas and they have not contributed, that would mean that there is a gap in the contribution. And as such, at that time, they may want to consider either contacting the NHT to see if it is that they can continue to self-contribute, or for the customers who have gone overseas and have continued to self-contribute, those persons would be able to access a benefit from the trust.
Is there a way to make a lump sum payment?
At this time, so I know that NHT used to facilitate it, but at this time, I can't say that they have been facilitating lump sum payments. So they have asked the customers to stay within the particular tenure of the 52 weeks and make the contribution payments on time within that specified period. But I know at one point they used to allow customers to make the full benefit contribution without having elapsed the time necessary to be an eligible member.
Could you also confirm for us if all the institutions you work with, they do the NHT, part of the application? Because I know, for example, Victoria Mutual, Jamaica National, and JMB do. Do the others?
Yes, all of them do.
Okay, good.
And do you manage that in your brokerage process, or is that something a client has to deal with on their own?
Okay, so for persons who are formally employed, so their employer makes those NHT contributions for them on their behalf, what they would do is to get a confirmation letter from their employer to state what is the total benefit that the employer has paid over to the trust on their behalf. So their integration into that system is they don't have to necessarily go to NHT. I facilitate that for them in terms of making the application to NHT on their behalf. But for customers who self-contribute, they have to get what is called a confirmation of benefit certificate from the trust to give to me. So that is obtained from the compliance department at NHT. So the overseas customer would have to liaise with NHT on that one particular aspect, but I still make the NHT application for the confirmation of benefit for all customers.
Good. Katie, we've been speaking a lot about NHT. Give us some indication as to what the NHT benefits are. So if somebody is a contributor, they're hoping to qualify by virtue of this 52-week payment, what size disbursement can they expect, and what are the NHT interest rates? I know there's a combining that can be done of benefits as well. Tell us more about that.
All right, so the maximum per individual, maximum disbursement per individual is $6.5 million, right? NHT allows a maximum combination of two benefits, right? So that would equal to $13 million. So the amount of benefit that you are entitled to depends on the amount of contribution, either self-contributed or deducted from your salary, right? So there is a band of which you would fall based on your income, and that band also has specified rates associated. So the rates at NHT at this time vary between 0% and 4% being the maximum.
Wow, that's significantly below market. And what are generally the band of rates offered by the other financial institutions, the non-subsidized rate?
So non-subsidized rates vary between 6.95% all the way up to 8.5%. So it's at least half of the maximum rate that is on the market at this time.
Can I ask, in your professional opinion, do you think that at some point the other institutions' interest rates will slowly catch up to NHT?
At this point, I highly doubt it. Especially now, the economic conditions that we're facing has been somewhat heightened with the pandemic that we're experiencing. So what I have observed over the past week is that there has been a tendency to somewhat, I don't want to say restrict, because restrict is such a strong word, but there has somewhat been a tightening of lending policies where institutions are paying more keen attention to, thinking of trying to have the foresight to see, all right, if this thing continues, how can it possibly impact the person's income and then therefore their ability to sustain mortgages? So we're seeing a lot of institutions moving towards perhaps asking customers to put up bigger deposits or in some cases increased interest rates. So the economic climate at this time, it's not booming and it's not as competitive as it were perhaps 6 months ago with this pandemic and the significance that it has on the entire world.
Which of course is a worldwide thing. So everybody is tightening up because obviously people want to make sure, well, the institutions want to make sure that we don't have people defaulting on their mortgages. So that is understandable.
Right. Yeah. And then because there has been a significant amount of persons that have lost income completely, a lot of these persons have sought assistance from the mortgage companies in terms of asking for some what we call a moratorium or delayed payment. Yeah. So there's a constriction right there. The mortgage company is no longer expecting this income from the persons who have requested this type of consideration. So things are a bit unstable now, but hopefully as we have to learn to live with this thing, and as we continue to navigate the climate, we will see where improvements can be made. So it's not anything that is set in stone. It is pretty, I would say, malleable. So it can be one way today and it can be another way tomorrow.
Are you confident about the way it's going, or are you getting feedback from people, doom and gloom, or are people saying this is only for a time and we know we're going to come through this? What sort of feedback are you getting?
I'm not experiencing doom and gloom at all in the market. I actually faced increased volumes of persons showing interest in mortgages since the pandemic. That has somewhat tapered off since persons have now gotten accustomed and we're trying to ease back into the normal, or as normal as it can be, workflow, and just trying to navigate the situation. But everyone has somewhat been comfortable. We understand that it is a change, and perhaps some persons would have been somewhat anxious at the initial stages of this thing. Yeah. But I can see where the anxiety have somewhat tapered off, and we're trying to continue. It's definitely not business as usual, and that is with any change situation. But I would say that the interest in mortgages it's been continuous. So I would say that there has been no real gap. So I don't feel doom and gloom at all.
That's good to know.
Kaydan, for, let's say, clients of Paulette who are looking to buy their first home or second home, as the case may be, what are some of the kind of checklist items you would suggest that they bear in mind prior to coming to you with their mortgage application? And also, can they come during the search process, or should they wait until they identify that property before coming to you?
All right. So my recommendation is to always see where you are before you actually start shopping around for properties. We are human beings and we get emotionally vested into things sometimes. Sometimes we get emotionally invested in something that we really cannot afford. So my best recommendation at all times is to simply get assessed. And to become assessed, what you will need is your confirmation of salary, valid identification, and I would need a snapshot, so to speak, of what your monthly obligations are in terms of living obligations and credit obligations. So the salary verification naturally would depend on the type of income that you have, whether you're formally employed, contractually employed, temporarily employed, self-employed. So we have a checklist of items that is required for each specific type of employment that one would need to present to me in order to be assessed. Now, for a formally employed individual, it's pretty simple. You have your pay slip, which is your confirmation of your salary right there. The declaration of your expenses is a simple form that you'd complete for me, and then everybody has their valid identification, right? For persons who may be contractually employed, they may not necessarily have pay slips, but they would have copies of their contract. And then in most cases, the income garnered from their contractual employment is placed in a bank account. So that bank account would act as the verification of salary, and then the contract would support that in terms of where this income is coming from. For a self-employed person, they generate their own income, right? So we ask that they have an accountant, a registered accountant, go through their financials, so to speak, and prepare a financial statement for them outlining what their income is. And then their bank statement will also support the income being generated by their self-employment.
Good. That, I think, is a fairly good summary. Before we wrap up, I think one of the things we've not touched on, I mean, it seems that you provide so much value to this process. You know, certainly in our practice, we've seen the value you bring to many of our clients. What is the cost of this service to the persons that come to you?
Robert, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you. Value is for free. All of this value is for free because our actual contracts are with the financial institutions. Customers pay nothing at all to me, right? And they have so much access to me and access to so much information. But they don't pay $1 out of pocket for my services. I actually get paid by the financial institutions only if the customer moves to process a mortgage application and that mortgage application is approved.
And the fact that you're being paid a fee by the mortgage institution in no way affects the rate that your client is getting.
Definitely. It does not affect the rate that the customer is charged at the mortgage company, nor does it affect the fees that come with a mortgage acquisition. So whether or not they use my services or go directly into the financial institution, the cost will be relatively the same.
Well, the value proposition seems quite clear. Kayden, we want to thank you. You've given us a whole raft of knowledge. I'm sure our viewers will benefit. And I think you're the kind of guest that we need to have on another time to discuss maybe some more of the detailed issues that are involved in the mortgage underwriting process. So thanks again. Thanks for coming, Kayden.
As usual, great talking to you.
Thank you, guys. And I look forward to being on another episode to share with you all.
We're looking forward to it as well. Thanks very much. Been very, very informative.
You're most welcome, Paulette.
Thanks again, Kayden. Bye for now. Robert Taylor and Paulette
Price.
Oh la 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 la, bamba, oh la la.